Friday, the 5th of February 2016. The Regency Hotel, located in the quiet suburban area of North Dublin, is hosting a boxing weigh-in event that evening. A crowd of journalists, fighters and their entourages have gathered for the event, a precursor to a much-anticipated boxing match. The hotel, typically known for hosting weddings and corporate events, has been temporarily transformed into a bustling scene of excitement, noise and anticipation. It's a typical Friday night in the world of professional boxing. But inside, beneath the noise and excitement, a deadly plot is unfolding. As the boxing weigh-in takes place in one of the hotel's ballrooms, no one knows that just moments away from the action, a hit is being prepared. The target is David Byrne, a senior member of the Kinahan cartel, known for his involvement in the drug trade, money laundering, and violent activities in Dublin's criminal underworld. Byrne, 33 years old, was one of the Kinahan cartel's trusted lieutenants. He had been attending the weigh-in with the understanding that the event was a business opportunity, a way to strengthen ties within the boxing world, a front that the Kinahans had been using to launder money. Byrne, dressed in his usual sharp attire, had arrived in high spirits, preparing for the event that was set to take place later that evening. The hotel was crowded, full of familiar faces from the world of Irish boxing and organized crime. There was a buzz of anticipation in the air as the fighters made their way onto the stage for the weigh-in. The scene seemed innocent enough, with people mingling, taking photos and chatting about the upcoming match. But all the while, two armed men were moving into position. At around 2:30 p.m., as the weigh-in was getting underway, 4 gunmen, disguised as Gardaí, entered the Regency Hotel. They wore uniforms including balaclavas and armed with handguns, and their plan was set in motion. The hotel staff and guests, unaware of what was about to happen, continued with their day, thinking nothing out of the ordinary. The gunmen made their way past the security team, using the crowd as cover as they approached their target. David Byrne, who had been mingling in the hotel lobby, chatting with associates and catching up with friends, was unaware of the danger lurking just moments away. But the gunmen knew exactly where to find him. They had planned everything down to the smallest detail, timing their attack perfectly. As Byrne walked through the hotel's corridor, a gunman who had been positioned nearby spotted him and moved swiftly. The hit was a well-coordinated execution. One of the gunmen approached Byrne from behind, drawing his weapon and firing at close range. The first shot rang out, striking Byrne in the head. As he collapsed, another gunman fired 2 more shots, hitting him in the chest. The attack was quick, precise, and ruthless. The hotel, once filled with excitement and anticipation, was now plunged into chaos. People screamed and ran for cover as the sound of gunshots echoed through the hotel. Blood stained the floor near Byrne's lifeless body, and his associates scrambled to comprehend what had just happened. The gunmen, dressed as Gardaí, didn't waste a second. They immediately turned and ran toward the back exit of the hotel, vanishing as quickly as they had arrived. Their escape was as smooth as their attack. By the time the chaos in the hotel had reached a fever pitch, they were already out of sight, leaving only confusion and fear in their wake. The immediate aftermath of the shooting was nothing short of chaotic. Security cameras within the hotel had captured the gunmen entering the venue, but the police and hotel staff were caught off guard. Hotel employees rushed to the scene while others tried to manage the panicked crowd. But it was too late. Byrne was already dead. The police were called, and within minutes Gardaí arrived at the Regency Hotel. They sealed off the area, keeping bystanders away from the crime scene, and began gathering evidence. But despite the large police presence, the killers had long since disappeared into Dublin's streets. The gunmen's identities were unclear, and no one knew for sure who was behind the shooting. The only thing that was certain was that the attack had been meticulously planned and carried out with military precision. Inside the hotel, guests and staff were left in shock. Many had witnessed the violence firsthand, some unsure if they would be next. The scene, usually one of celebration, had become a chilling reminder of the brutal violence that could erupt at any moment in Dublin's Gangland. David Byrne's execution had been quick, but its impact was far-reaching. As the police investigated the scene, forensic teams combed through the hotel, gathering evidence and talking to witnesses. But with the gunman having escaped without a trace, the investigation was always going to be difficult. Despite the hotel's security footage and witness accounts, the shooters remained anonymous, their identities and motives shrouded in mystery. What made the Regency Hotel shooting particularly shocking was the brazenness of the attack. It wasn't just a crime, it was a spectacle, carried out in a public space and witnessed by numerous people. This wasn't the work of a small-time gangster. It was the calculated execution of a high-ranking member of Dublin's criminal elite. David Byrne's death sent shockwaves throughout the city and within the underworld, confirming that the feud between the Kinahan cartel and the Hutch family had reached a terrifying new level. As the dust settled on that fateful Friday afternoon, one thing was clear. The Regency Hotel shooting was not just an act of violence, it was a message, and Dublin's criminal world would never be the same again.
View Drive, Fireswood, Coolock, on Monday, the 13th of January 2020, are those of Keane, Mulready-Woods.
It's Monday, January 13th. A distressed sister takes to Facebook, seeking information about her 17-year-old brother, who has vanished the previous evening. She pleads, "Has anyone seen my brother? He's just 17 and no one has heard from him." Friends and family are filled with worry, but what they don't yet realize is that Keane has met a horrific fate. He has been murdered in a brutal gang attack, a crime that would shock the entire nation. Gardaí are urgently appealing for information after human remains are discovered in a sports bag in North Dublin at approximately 10 p.m. that night. The discovery is made by children who stumble upon the bag. Inside they find something utterly horrifying: human limbs belonging to Keane Mulready-Woods. Also found within the bag are a pair of flip-flops. This detail would soon be revealed as more than just an oddity. It serves as a chilling symbol of revenge and a stark warning from one of Ireland's infamous gangsters, Robbie Lawler. A notorious hitman, Lawler has experienced humiliation just a month earlier after being ambushed by a group of youths who robbed him, beat him and stole his gym bag. This was just the beginning of the conflict. Robbie is subjected to public ridicule as footage of the incident circulates on social media, with the attackers even posting pictures of themselves wearing his flip-flops. For a man of Lawler's stature, this is an insult that demands retaliation. But who was Keane Mulready-Woods, and how did he find himself at the center of such a gruesome gang murder? Keane grew up in Drogheda and attended St. Oliver's Community College. He was a popular young man from a well-liked working-class family. A passionate motocross enthusiast, he owned a scrambler bike. During his mid-teens, Keane was drawn into petty crime by local criminals, promising him money, designer clothes, and respect. This path into the criminal underworld is a common story for many young people across the country. However, Keane's descent into this world was accelerated by his connection to his godfather, a notorious gang leader named Owen Maguire. He became involved in Maguire's drug gang at a time when tensions with a rival group were escalating. Known as the Drogheda feud, Keane found himself embroiled in this violent conflict. He had even vandalized the home of a man who owed a drug debt by smashing a window and throwing a petrol bomb inside. But the feud soon escalated into something much darker. On July 5, 2018, a life-changing event occurred when Keane's godfather, Owen Maguire, was shot 6 times by an attacker at his home. One bullet lodged in his spine, leaving him permanently paralyzed. The identity of the gunman remained a mystery until November 2022, when court documents revealed it to be Robbie Lawler. The night of January 12, 2020, marked a tragic turning point for Keane as he left home for what would be his final outing. Earlier that evening, he had called his mother, asking her to leave money for a taxi to bring him back later, unaware he had been lured into a deadly trap. Paul Crosby had arranged to meet Keane, and Gerard Cruz acted as the driver, taking them to 31 Rothmullen Park, a house linked to Crosby, a known gangster closely associated with Robbie Lawler, who awaited them inside. Initially, the plan was to intimidate Keane, to send him a warning. However, the situation escalated into a horrific ordeal. Once inside the house, Keane was overpowered, beaten, and tortured. According to reports, Robbie Lawler delivered the fatal blow, stabbing Keane in the neck and leaving him bleeding on the floor. But Lawler's brutality didn't end there. He dismembered Keane's body using a knife, cutting him into pieces in a gruesome act meant to send a message to rival gangs. He placed Keane's remains into a black Puma sports bag alongside the symbolic pair of flip-flops before disposing of them in 2 separate locations. The bag containing his limbs was abandoned in Collins, and his head and hands were burned in a car in Drumcondra. While investigators could not confirm a single motive for the murder beyond the ongoing gang war, there were strong indications that Keane's close ties to Owen Maguire made him a target. As Maguire's godson, he was seen as part of his inner circle, making him vulnerable to attacks from Lawler's gang. The rivalry between Lawler and Maguire intensified after Maguire's paralysis in 2018, prompting further violence between the two factions. Another potential motive for Keane's murder was revenge for Lawler's earlier humiliation. Weeks before Keane's death, he was ambushed by youths leaving a gym in Dublin. The attack went viral on social media, damaging Lawler's feared reputation. While there was no direct evidence linking Keane to the incident, the presence of the flip-flops alongside his dismembered limbs strongly suggested that Lawler believed Keane had a role in the mockery of his reputation. However, Lawler would not escape the consequences of his brutal actions. On April 4, 2020, just months after Keane's murder, he was gunned down in broad daylight in Belfast. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Reports indicated that Cornelius Price, a Drogheda gang leader, paid over €100,000 for Lawler's assassination after luring him with a fake hit. Prior to this, Lawler had fled to Britain after being released from prison during the height of the Drogheda drugs feud, out of fear for his own safety after the killing of his brother-in-law. Price also relocated his family to ensure their safety following the extreme violence in the area. Gardaí reported that Price was outraged by the brutality of Keane's murder and believed Lawler and his associates had crossed an unforgivable line. As a result, Price orchestrated Lawler's death and expressed his sentiments on social media shortly after the killing, expressing mockery for Lawler's demise. Meanwhile, in the ongoing investigations, Captain Patrick Tier and Adrian Holland were charged with Lawler's murder, while a third accused, James Fields, appeared in court for assisting offenders. The investigations continued, with sources indicating that there was deep-rooted animosity between the parties involved. Both Lawler and Price met their end, but in contrasting circumstances. Lawler through violence and Price ultimately due to a brain disease. But what transpired following Keane's murder led to court trials that aimed to deliver justice to his grieving family. The lengthy proceedings in the Special Criminal Court revealed that 27-year-old Paul Crosby and 49-year-old Gerard Cruz played pivotal roles in the lead-up to Keane's murder. They were responsible for luring him to 31 Rothmullen Park, where the horrific events unfolded. Both men had extensive criminal records, with Crosby having over 40 previous convictions. Even though neither physically participated in the murder, their involvement in facilitating the crime was significant. They were seen laughing as they left court after sentencing, with one overheard boasting about their relatively short sentences. Crosby received a 10-year prison term, while Cruz was sentenced to 7 years. Both had 6-month suspended sentences. Under remission rules, Crosby could be released in approximately 7.5 years, while Cruz could be out in 5 years. Another key player in this tragedy was 46-year-old Stephen Carberry, who was also charged in the Special Criminal Court. Carberry was accused of transporting and disposing of Keane's dismembered body parts between January 13th and 15th, 2020. He was also charged with setting fire to the car in which Keane's head and hands were found. As the investigation continued, Gardaí remained hopeful of making more arrests related to the disposal of Keane's remains and other aspects of this horrific murder. It's Sunday, April 4th, 2020. The streets of Belfast are quiet on this spring day, but a sense of tension lingers in the air. Robbie Lawler, one of Ireland's most feared gangsters, is about to face the consequences of his violent actions. Lawler, who had made a name for himself as a ruthless hitman, was a prominent figure in the criminal underworld, known for his connections and merciless reputation. Just months prior, Lawler was involved in the brutal murder of 17-year-old Keane Mulready-Woods, a crime that shocked the nation and marked a significant escalation in the ongoing gang feud between rival factions. Keane's murder was not just about settling scores. It was a statement, a message sent from Lawler to his rivals, demonstrating the lengths to which he would go to exert dominance. The violence surrounding the gang war had escalated quickly. Lawler's actions had sparked outrage among rival gang members, particularly those associated with the Drogheda gang led by Owen Maguire, who was Keane's godfather. The feud had already claimed numerous lives, but Keane's gruesome murder marked a turning point, intensifying hostilities and drawing a line in the sand between the two factions. On the morning of April 4th, Robbie Lawler was in Belfast, unaware that he was being hunted. He had been lured into a trap set by the very people who sought revenge for Keane's murder. It is reported that Cornelius Price, a notorious Drogheda gang boss, had orchestrated the hit on Lawler, wanting to avenge the brutal killing that had crossed all boundaries of brutality. As Lawler went about his day, a group of armed men lay in wait. They had plotted his demise, driven by anger over the loss of Keane Mulready-Woods and the reign of terror that Lawler had unleashed on their community. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Vengeance was at hand. At around 2 p.m., as Lawler was leaving a property in Belfast, he was ambushed. Gunfire erupted, and witnesses reported hearing multiple shots fired. Lawler attempted to flee, but he was swiftly cornered by his attackers. The execution was quick and brutal, characteristic of the gangland violence that had plagued Ireland for years. Lawler was shot dead in broad daylight, his lifeless body left on the street for all to see. News of Lawler's murder spread quickly, sending shockwaves through the criminal underworld. The irony of his fate was not lost on those who had followed the violent escalation of the Drogheda feud. Lawler, who had terrorized many, had now become a victim himself, a casualty of the very game he had played for years. Cornelius Price, who had orchestrated the hit, was reported to have paid over €100,000 to have Lawler killed. This was not merely a personal vendetta, it was a calculated move to restore order and deliver a powerful message to rival gangs. Price had once feared Lawler, but now he sought retribution, believing that Lawler's reign of terror had to end. In the days following Lawler's murder, the police launched an investigation, and several individuals were arrested in connection with the hit. Among them were members of the Drogheda gang, including those who had directly participated in the ambush. The authorities knew that this was just the beginning. The fallout from Lawler's death would undoubtedly lead to further violence. The ongoing gang war in Ireland was far from over. Lawler's murder, while a victory for some, was likely to ignite more bloodshed, as rival factions sought to avenge their fallen leader. The cycle of violence continued, and the streets remained dangerous as gangs vied for power and control. In the end, Robbie Lawler's life was a cautionary tale, a reflection of the brutal reality of gang life. It serves as a reminder of how violence begets violence, and how the quest for power can ultimately lead to one's downfall. As the investigation unfolds, the repercussions of Lawler's actions and his eventual murder will continue to ripple through the fabric of Irish society, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. It's Tuesday, the 21st of May 2019. A black Opel Insignia is parked on a quiet rural road near Walshestown, Balbriggan, North Dublin. The car is set alight, flames tearing through the interior, turning it into a smouldering wreck. Just 10 feet away on the gravel lies a body. The man has been shot multiple times, once in the head and once in the chest. His name is Sean Little, and his murder is yet another escalation in Dublin's relentless gangland war. Little, a 22-year-old from Coolock, had been climbing the ranks in the city's drug trade. He wasn't a kingpin, but he was well connected, affiliated with the Kinahan cartel through its local factions. He had built a network moving large amounts of cocaine and cannabis, running with some of the most dangerous men in North Dublin. His lifestyle reflected his growing status, with flashy cars, expensive holidays, and designer clothes. But in the world he operated in, success came with enemies. For years, tensions had been building between rival groups in Coolock and Finglas. The Gucci Gang, a Kinahan-backed faction led by the notorious figure known as Mr. Flashy, had been expanding aggressively. At the same time, older crime bosses, including the powerful but shadowy figure known as Mr. Big, were trying to maintain control of their territory. These conflicts created a fragile underworld where one wrong move could mean death. Sean Little's troubles intensified after the murder of his closest friend, Zach Parker, just 4 months earlier. Parker, a small-time dealer with debts to the Gucci Gang, had been shot dead while leaving a gym in January 2019. His killing wasn't just about money, it was a warning. In Dublin's gangland, a debt was never forgiven, even if the drugs had been seized by police. Little took Parker's murder personally. At the funeral, he posted images of the two of them together, calling Parker his brother and making it clear that revenge was on his mind. He wasn't alone. Many of his associates wanted payback, but that kind of talk was dangerous. In the weeks after Parker's death, paranoia spread among Little's crew. Some believed there was a rat in their circle, while others suspected that their own allies had sanctioned the killing. As tensions escalated, Little found himself increasingly isolated. He had ties to the Keane cartel, but his growing ambition was seen as a threat by some within his own network. There were whispers that he was acting outside the control of Mr. Flashy, dealing directly with bigger suppliers. Others believed he was making reckless decisions, drawing too much attention to himself at a time when police pressure was mounting. On the night of his murder, Little had been seen in the company of a trusted associate, 41-year-old Hamid Sanambar, an Iranian national with deep connections to Dublin's underworld. The two were spotted together just hours before Little's execution. Some believe that Sanambar was meant to be his protection. Others suspect he may have played a role in setting him up. What is known is that at some point that night, Little was driven to a quiet road near Balbriggan. There he was shot twice, once in the head and once in the chest. The killers left his body beside the burning opal insignia, a signature of Gangland executions. It was a message. Sean Little had become a liability. Less than 24 hours later, the cycle of violence continued. On the 22nd of May, Jordan Davis, another close friend of Little, was gunned down in broad daylight while pushing his infant son in a pram. Just minutes before his death, he had posted a tribute to Little on Facebook. His execution was as brutal as it was public. It was clear that anyone connected to Little was now a target. In the days following Little's murder, suspicions within his gang turned toward Hamid Sanambar. Some of Little's closest associates believed Sanambar had set him up. Whether or not that was true, revenge was inevitable. A week later, on the 28th of May 2019, mourners gathered at the Little family home for his wake. Among them was Sanambar. Despite the rumors, he showed up, acting as if nothing was wrong. But as he stepped outside onto the driveway, 3 masked gunmen were waiting. They opened fire, hitting him multiple times in the head and chest. He collapsed in the garden, dying instantly. The killers fled in a getaway car, later found burnt out, a near-identical setup to Little's murder. Sanambar's execution was another turning point. It was clear that the feud was spiraling out of control. The violence wasn't stopping, it was accelerating. With each murder, the list of targets only grew longer. Within months, more bodies dropped. Coolock, Darndale and Finglas became battlegrounds, with young men being pulled into the cycle of bloodshed. What had started as a dispute over drug debts had escalated into a full-scale gang war with no sign of ending. The murder of Sean Little wasn't just another hit, it was a catalyst. It set off a wave of killings that would dominate Dublin's underworld for years to come.